At the end of last year, my brother really pushed for me to give the first Locke trilogy a shot. He knew that Grim Dark, I hadn't read much of it. I think I read like a portion of the first Song of Ice and Fire book. But the genre, just based on everything I heard, I just didn't know if it'd be for me. But after I picked up The Blade itself, I absolutely loved it. I think the character work was great in that book. And so for 2020, I wanted to make more of an effort to expose myself to more Grim Dark. I'm still working. I just finished Before They Were Hanged, which is the second one in the first Locke trilogy. And then I'll probably put out a review after I finished the last one in the trilogy. But like I was saying, I wanted to make more of an effort to read more Grimdark. And one of the books that became highly recommended, comes highly recommended rather, and one I actually bought about a year and a half ago that's just been sitting around, is The Lies of Locke Lamora, the first entry in the Gentleman Bastard series, obviously. I just heard great things about it, the character work. There's a relationship between Locke and Jean, which people have gone as far as to say that it's like one of the best friendships in writing. I will say, now I've only read the first book in the trilogy, obviously. Their relationship is great so far, but I don't know if I'd go as far to say as, I don't think it's reached those heights yet. So I'm very intrigued to see where it goes in the next two books, because I know how highly people rave about it. And from what I read in Lies of Locke Lamora, I didn't get that. It still is a great friendship. Both those characters are very likable. They're great characters, but I just didn't see that bond wasn't anything out of the ordinary for me. Maybe you guys disagree. I'm sure I will change my mind once I've read, the next two books. Maybe not, I'm sure, but I have an idea, that it's probably going to develop even further once I get a little further in the series, having only read the first entry. What I will say is, I think this is a really good book if you're not super into the deep, dark depths of Grimdark, just because it's not overly dark. It's definitely grimdark, though. There's definitely morally gray characters, but the city it's in, the setting is just so captivating. It's just such a cool premise. The premise is written so well. It's just fun. You're following, a group of thieves. It kind of reminds me of when I played Skyrim for the first time, discovering the Thieves Guild and, having a lot of fun with that. It just kind of scratches that itch for you. It's just a really cool idea, and it's just done so well. You're constantly empathizing and sympathizing with Locke, who's a thief at the end of the day, doing some very questionable stuff, but it's almost like he's almost like a Robin Hood figure, just because he's not really like everything he steals. He definitely is not going out and, throwing to all the poor people in the streets. The city, it's based on like a Venice type city. I feel like it's such a great example of what you can do in fantasy. You don't need to write these huge, gigantic worlds that, stretch continents. This is just such a good example of, what you can do with a well-defined, detailed, intricate city and everything that goes into it, all the deep, dark crevices. You really get a good idea of that. And then, I can see maybe it branches out from there, but you're just so captivated with everything that's happening in this city. I never, found myself thinking, oh, but it's such a small world, compared to what I'm used to reading, because I'm used to reading like Cosmere. I'm about halfway through Malazan, but I never found myself wanting more than what was the city itself in this book. Also, the villain in this book, I think, is really well done. He's mysterious, which kind of goes with the general theme. Everything seems to be dark and mysterious. There's a lot of questions as to what's going on, what motives are kind of propelling people to do certain things. And I think the villain fits right in there. To go back to my earlier point with the whole like Skyrim Thieves Guild, it's like that, but then you also have this element of like Ocean's 11 heist type stuff, which I don't know who doesn't love a good heist. And it's just done so incredibly well in this. I think Scott Lynch has done a really phenomenal job doing so much with, just a premise that isn't overly complicated, kind of like an Oliver Twist type character. He's this kid who was raised on the street, stealing to survive, stealing food to survive, dealing with, the scum of society, basically, thieves, murderers, what kind of person would come out of that environment. And then also seeing how he views society and the city he's in through that lens, and how he develops into like a grown man where he's, still a thief, but kind of where his morals lie. There's a lot of questions there. So it's just a really, really solid book. It's just fun too. It's, a longer book, 700-ish pages. But it's just one of those books, once again, I feel like I say this a lot in my reviews. It doesn't feel like 700 pages because you're having a lot of fun with it. You constantly want to find out the end. Where's this heist going to go? Is he going to get caught? How's he going to pull it off? What exactly are the details going to be? So if you are looking maybe to get into Grimdark, or if you're into Grimdark, I definitely recommend it. But I feel like it's a good entry point for the genre. Just based off the premise of the actual story, it's still just a fun book to read. So if you're maybe looking for a more fun Grimdark book to read, maybe something not so heavy, there are still definitely Grimdark elements in there. Scott Lynch definitely doesn't pull any punches, but I think just the characters are so fun. I found myself laughing out loud that it just feels, a little bit lighter than maybe First Law or A Song of Ice and Fire. And it was definitely a good breath of fresh air.